They call it the fog of war. It's an overwhelming experience that's not processed when you're there.
This is called Please Try Something Different. It's not like it used to be. Not like it used to be. He said, come on, suck it up. They said, it's time you just moved on. She said, wherever you go, there you are. And all I heard was nagging voices, barking orders, missile raids in my head. I mean, it's not like it used to be. You see me here, but I am so far gone. You see me here, but I am so far gone. He said, you can make a career out of this. They said, thank you for your service, but they never, ever listened. She said, you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but can you please try seeing death and then have nothing go wrong because you people triggered a social disease because you don't hear shit after we come home, not like it used to be. She said, you have PTSD. Post-terror soul disorder, passively timid, sometimes dangerous, pathetically trying, slowly dying, potentially terminal spiritual disease.
So I think for the veterans who do it, there's something very powerful about putting it out there.
Maybe we just didn't understand what we were getting ourselves into, driven by the desire to serve some greater good or follow in the footsteps of our fathers.
It's one for the person that makes it, and then art to me is not complete unless there's an audience. It requires what I think about as a witness, somebody that witnesses that experience.
Warrior writers, all veterans, read at the 2014 Dodge Poetry Festival. It was part of a special program called Another Kind of Courage. In the lobby, people bought books and looked at artwork made by veterans in combat paper workshops. Warrior writers and combat paper work together loosely.
It's all made out of military uniforms.
It's possible because both groups are there to help veterans tell their stories.
A lot of the combat paper workshops include a writing element based on warrior writers' free writing style. It really is an immediate way to get thoughts and feelings and expression out from your head.
I just want to say, aren't these guys amazing, right? The warrior writers. We give a hand up for the warrior writers. It's an honor to read with these people. And I am one.
Brian Turner is a well-known war poet and writer. The New York Times called his 2014 memoir stunning.
There are many projects that I've come across over the years, including things like Combat Paper Project, the Warrior Writers, Operation Homecoming, which is connected to National Endowment for the Arts. All of them, in a sense, create a way for, regardless if you're professional or what you might consider amateur or new to a whole entire art form, it creates a space for the larger human being to exist and to experiment and to explore with. And for those, it's not everybody's cup of tea. They're not all going to go to that. But those who give it a try, I've found oftentimes are surprised not only by what the art form can do, but actually in a more profound way, what their own souls are capable of and what their own imaginations are capable of.
Combat Paper NJ works with vets all over at VA hospitals and at colleges like Stockton, named one of the best for vets by Military Times. Combat paper is a process of cutting up uniforms, recycling them into paper, and then making artwork with it. In workshops, director David Keefe guides vets, many of them first-time artists, through the same process he went through.
But I was going through a really tough time. Like I said, 4 years after I came back from Iraq, and I had to do something. So I sat down with my partner in crime, who's my co-coordinator right now. His name is Eli Wright. He couldn't make it here tonight. And he taught me how to do this. And I cut into my uniform, and it changed my life. So Combat Paper New Jersey was born in 2011. We brought it all over the state of New Jersey, and now we're here at Stockton College. But these uniforms really mean a lot to us as veterans.
I was deployed to Iraq, like southern Iraq from 2009 to 2010, and then I was deployed to eastern Afghanistan from 2011 to 2012. I mean, I can look back on and say that, I did it, it was something I did, so.
I guess the larger question is, how do we welcome back a generation of warriors? And there's some traditions that when the warriors come back from war, they have to stop short of the village. And the villagers go out to meet them. And they unclothe them and they wash them to symbolically wash the blood from their bodies and their experiences. And I think there's something very healthy in that process for both sides. Because as it is now, for the most part, veterans come home or military members come home, and then as they get out of uniform, they basically sort of blend back into their communities, without the community having to also go out to reach them.
It says the worst part is feeling numb to it, but it was the only way that I could survive with my sanity.
Coming home from war can mean PTSD, but it almost always means dealing with moral injury. It's a concept developed by psychiatrist Jonathan Shea after working at VA hospitals and after a deep reading of Homer's great war stories, the Iliad and the Odyssey.
And what does moral injury mean? It means when you perpetrate some acts that are against your sense of ethics or your ideals. So we send our I call them children, to war, and they have good intentions. They're there to help, They believe in the cause in some way. And then because of the leadership or because of the collateral damage of war, they wind up having to commit acts that they feel inhuman about, killing inadvertently a woman or a child. So there's all these acts during the wartime that go against their sense of right and wrong, and they come home and they've been forever changed by this experience.
I've been able to see, and I think the community of veterans have been able to see, that this process that we're working on is something much larger. Our therapy is just one part of it. It's therapy, it's craft making, it's community building, it's storytelling. It's all a whole array of things. But the larger picture is we're really trying to, engage the public. We're really trying to bridge that gap between the veteran and the civilian, so that the civilian or non-veteran can understand the complexity of the veteran experience.
Every week, Combat Paper NJ holds an open workshop at the Printmaking Center of New Jersey, open to all vets.
In 1970, I came out of the Marine Corps. I went to the University of New Mexico. I felt like I was the only Vietnam veteran in the whole world, which of course was ridiculous. There was a time when there was 500,000 of us in Vietnam. There was a draft. Everybody knew people in the military. But I felt isolated until I started meeting veterans. This generation of veterans is even more isolated. There's less of them. There's no draft, so there's no compelling fear on the part of the average American boy, or nowadays maybe the American girl as well, of winding up in uniform. It's easy not to care.
The regulars work side by side with newcomers, sharing their stories from Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Sarah Mess was in Somalia as a surgical tech, but was drawn into combat because there were so few boots on the ground.
I call this the best of what's around because it represents what I use to sort of sustain myself. The green represents Vietnam veterans because they were all that I had to come home to. The closest that I have come to coming home has been in this community. Combat Paper and Warrior Writers, they're programs that stand in the way of isolation, avoidance, depression, suicidal ideation. They're lifelines, and they've saved my life. And the music of the Dave Matthews Band saved my life.
Hey, my friend, it seems your eyes are troubled, care to share your time with me. Would you say
the Combat Paper NJ is veteran run. It's run for vets, by vets. And there's something beautiful about that. Really, it was about bearing witness to what we could do and then deciding to make it a permanent part of what we do at the Printmaking Center.
Coming home from the fog of war, coping with moral injuries. Combat Paper and Warrior Writers are asking veterans to tell their stories.
Our eyes were sewn open, unable to look away from horror stories unfolding in front of us. We came home incomplete, with no words to describe how our hearts are now beating us black and blue for some of the things we had to see and do.
And they're asking us to listen.
It's very important for us to change that culture of non-storytelling, to allow the veterans a chance to tell their stories, give them the voice, amplify their voices, and put it together into something that speaks raw and from the heart, and that's art making.
And even though they said our war was over, it sure don't seem that way. But hopefully, one of these days, we'll finally make it back home. Thank you.